Hello, welcome. I am John O'Brien from the Keystone Contractors Association, and today the KCA AI Task Force is offering a program that was brought to us by the team at Schneider Downs. It's from guesswork to predictable margins, how construction leaders are using AI. We have top-notch team here from Schneider Downs from their SD digital department. We have, I don't even know if I should attempt the last name here, but we have Mike Scalamogna. No?
Scalamogna, you're close, John.
Scalamogna. Okay, all
Just
right.
missed it.
And I will attempt this name, David James. So we have Mike and David are going to steer the ship here for the next hour or so. When it comes to questions, you can raise your virtual hand and we can call on you, or you could drop a question in the chat and we'll answer it that way. Don't feel as if you have to wait till the end. You can ask whenever. So, like I said, I'm thrilled. I'm excited. We have another AI program. Without further ado, Mike and David, the show is yours. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, John. Hey, everybody. Thank you for having us out here today to do this webinar. This is a topic that is near and dear to mine and David's heart and our hearts here at SD. We're going to talk today about AI and data, because data is one of the most important things you can feed to AI to get accurate results. So when I do these types of presentations, I like to start with a statistic. So let's do that. 85%. It's not an AI failure rate, it's a data failure rate. So roughly 85% of AI initiatives fail because the underlying data isn't ready. Most businesses still operate on several different fragmented systems for projects and accounting. You got ERP on one side, you have construction management on the other, and then you got spreadsheets filling in all the gaps between. But we keep doing this to ourselves. We keep jumping straight to AI. And that's why we're here today. You can't have a conversation about AI without talking about data first. AI doesn't fix bad data. It just gives you the wrong answer faster and with a nicer bow on it. So I'm here today with David James to talk with you about your AI strategy and why it should be underpinned by a data strategy. So before we dive in, just a couple quick intros. My name is Mike Scalamogna. I'm a manager in the digital practice here at Schneider Downs. I've been in the tech space for about 15 years. A lot of experience on ERP implementations and data analytics. I boomeranged back to SD about 3 years ago to do something that I had never done before, which was to build a customer success team. And 3 years later, it's the best job I've ever had. Fun tidbit about my construction background. I actually grew up in the residential construction world. And my claim to fame that is still unchallenged here at Schneider Downs is that I'm the only person at the firm that can ride a wheelie on a skid steer. So I'll let David introduce himself, and then we'll talk about who SD Digital is.
Mike, I'm not sure that I've ever heard that one before.
I'm
So we need
full
to
of
talk
fun
about
facts.
that. Hi, everyone. I'm David James. I'm a manager on the digital modernization side of SD Digital. Um, Came to SD, I think about 6 years ago, 7 years now. Started on the audit side of the world, then came to Schneider Downs on the risk advisory side, and then eventually made my way into the tech space. So I have a unique background in that I have all that financial knowledge now mixed with the tech side. So our team spends a lot of time working with clients, helping navigate from, the point A to whatever that point B is. So whether that's from a people or a process technology, um, that can fall under software selections or AI strategy. And I spent a lot of time with the construction folks, understanding how they work, and looking forward to sharing some of that with you all today.
All right. Thanks, David. So wanted to introduce Schneider Downs and Schneider Downs Digital. before we dive in. We're an audit, tax, and consulting firm. We're headquartered in Pittsburgh. We have today about 120 construction clients with interests across about 15 states. Our construction practice has 12 partners and probably over about 30 practitioners across the business. And collectively, the practice was recognized as number 30 on the top 50 construction accounting firms list. So we've got a lot of industry experience, and it's an industry that we really enjoy serving. David and I sit in SD Digital. SD Digital, we help construction CFOs improve cash flow, protect margins, and scale without adding headcount. We do that by focusing on outcomes, not just technology. We really, really believe that focusing on the outcome first yields a better result and prevents creating technical debt. A lot of the things that we do with our construction clients is around data. We fix fragmented data. We automate manual processes. AP is one of the biggest things we're talking about these days with our clients. We apply analytics and AI to surface project and financial risk earlier. And then we have some more real focused point solutions. So we know that in the construction world, lease accounting is a big headache for our clients, and equipment rentals. So we built a lease accounting platform for our clients across all industries, but we have a large client base in construction using that tool. So that's a little bit about SD Digital. Again, we're outcome focused, and we don't believe in just throwing technology at a solution, hoping to fix it. So commercial over. Oh, actually, I got one more part of the commercial. I want to talk a little bit about what we do with AI before we get into it. So in its simplest form, AI is a productivity tool. We can coach your teams on how to best use it. So from conceptualizing prompts to identifying use cases and then training your users on it. Take a step further, and now you have human-led agents that can go out and actually do things for you, like review bid data, combine field reports, pull together a WIP schedule or a schedule of values, et cetera. We can help conceptualize how your teams would use those agents, which ones will drive the most impact for your business. And then we can either build the agents or coach your team on how to do it. We can also help you with application bespoke AI tools. For example, we know that Procore is investing in AI, and as are the other big players in the construction space. So we can help you determine which features and tools can drive the most impact for your business, and how those tools, most importantly, would enhance or change existing processes. And then at the enterprise level, we have Lumenfi that we built. It's our own AI platform. And because we strongly believe that AI is the new UI, and you'll hear more about that later, but we really think that AI is going to replace ad hoc reporting, like updating a WIP schedule, creating a schedule of values, cost of completion, all those types of reports. We know that they're time consuming, they're manual, and they're error prone. So we know that AI, there's a use case there. But enough about us. Let's talk about AI and data. So when we talk to CFOs in the construction industry, AI comes up in almost every conversation. The hype cycle's over, and the real opportunity to use AI to improve forecasting, protect margins, and spot problems is here. But what we consistently see is that AI adoption stalls for one simple reason, and that is data readiness. Think about all the data you have across your different systems. You have job costs, you have labor, you have materials, you have equipment, you have WIP, you have change orders, there's billing, and it's all stretched across long project life cycles and fragmented systems. So month end is really the only time that you have that you get real trusted data. And at that point, it's a retrospect, right? It's not forward looking. So we're also seeing that data is often not standardized. So cost codes, job structures, change order status, et cetera. Teams set up jobs differently. So what you end up with is critical records missing or incomplete. And you have invoice exceptions, you have contract risk, you have inaccuracies and estimates, you have underbillings, and then just friction with all your business partners, from employees to owners to vendors and everybody in between. So the reality is that AI doesn't replace financial judgment in construction. It amplifies it. It turns all that data that you have in those different places and those different files into real information. But data needs to be clean, connected, and governed. And that's why data and AI are really part of the same conversation. One without the other is not going to move the needle. And firms that get this right don't just start with AI tools. They start by fixing the data foundation. And once that's in place, then AI becomes a force multiplier for forecasting, for margin protection and decision making. And it's no longer an experiment. So I want to talk about a few of the indicators that should tip your hat to tell you that, hey, your data might need cleaned up, or you might need to take a look at your data before you tackle AI. A big indicator is what you see on the screen. I asked AI to give me a Excel hell graphic, and this is what it came up with, and I really thought this would resonate. So if you have critical processes like WIP schedules, cash forecasts, cost to complete, schedule values, backlog reporting, if that lives in Excel and it's maintained by a few people, by a few key people, that's a sign that the data isn't systematized or trusted. And I guess another way of saying it is that when Excel is the system of record for something, it means that the core systems can't keep up. You got to find a home for that data. Excel's great for having a dashboard or a report, but if Excel is the job cost ledger, we need to talk. Speaking of job costs, another red flag is paper-based or email-based communication from the field. When you have things like production quantities, change orders, time cards, job updates, and daily field reporting really coming in from PDFs, text, emails, that data is delayed, it's manually rekeyed, and it's often incomplete. And by the time it hits finance, it's already stale. Right. So that's going to lead to surprise write-downs, late-stage margin erosion. And if the project looks healthy for months and then suddenly falls apart at or near the end, that's rarely just a project execution problem, right? That's usually a visibility problem. The data existed, it just wasn't timely, it wasn't connected, or it wasn't actionable. Or, in a different way of saying it might be that you had a bunch of receipts sitting in one of your foreman's trucks out the job that didn't make it into the job cost system. So that's another sign. Finally, if you're asking basic questions and you think it takes too long to answer, like which jobs are at risk, what's driving margin erosion, or how will this new project impact cash over the next 90 days, that's a real strong signal that the data foundation might not be there, or it might need some work. And when answers to those types of questions require manual work, they require meetings, reconciliations, it's really impossible to layer AI on top and get a good result. So that's the reality that most of us live in today. And David, I want to turn it over to you now, and you can talk us through what we can do to get our AI data ready, and how some of the construction clients we have are using AI.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so I think just starting off by saying, AI is one of those topics right now where everyone feels like they should be doing something, um, but not everyone is totally sure what that something is yet. So that's exactly what we want to change today. So we're going to cover four things. First, a quick level set on what AI actually is, why data sits at the center of it. We'll walk through real business use cases, so things construction companies are doing today across finance, project management, estimating, all those different areas. Then we'll spend some time on data governance and structure, because that's what separates organizations that get real results from ones that are, running a pilot and they stall out. And then we'll close with where to start. Most companies don't struggle with the ideas. They struggle with knowing, what are the first few steps? What do they actually look like? So with that, we can get into it. All right. So before we get into use cases, I want to go through a few terms that get used interchangeably, but are actually very different. Because in this space, words get used interchangeably in ways that can create a lot of confusion about what's actually possible and what it takes to get there. So, starting on the far left, automation is the starting point. It's rules-based, it's repetitive, it's about eliminating manual effort. So, in construction, that could be things like routing invoices for approval or syncing data between systems, generating some of those standard reports. There isn't any intelligence or any thinking that's happening here. It's just doing that same task faster and more consistently. Then in analytics, this is where we see most construction companies operating today. So things like dashboards, WIP reports, cost versus budget, understanding what's already happened. Um, the one limitation with that is that it is backward looking. So you're making decisions based on something that's already happened. So then you move into AI and machine learning. So this is where the systems start identifying patterns and making predictions. This is where that value curve starts to steepen significantly, but so does the dependency on that clean and consistent data. And we'll come back to these in a few slides. And then at the far end, we have AI agents. So this is where systems aren't just giving you insights. They're actually going to take action within a defined set of defined boundaries. So instead of telling you that a subcontractor is trending late, an agent might automatically surface that downstream schedule impact and draft a communication. So this is where things are really getting exciting for construction, and I think it's closer than what most people think. So the important thing to take away from this slide is that each step from left to right requires more from your data, but it delivers significantly more in return. And the path from left to right isn't a leap, it's a progression. And we'll talk about what that progression looks like. All right, so I want to talk through four specific AI models and how they map to a crawl, walk, run progression or line of thinking. So, because that's really the practical roadmap for how construction companies move forward with these types of things. So the reason crawl, walk, run frame matters is that it gives you a way to build momentum without trying to solve everything at once. You can start somewhere that you can win quickly, you can learn from it, and then you can expand from there. So the first is RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. This is always the best place to crawl. So the reason for that is simple because it works on documents that you already have. So contracts, RFIs, project correspondence, SOPs, if those documents exist and they're reasonably organized, you can start getting value almost immediately. So instead of a project manager digging through folders to find a contract clause, they ask a question and the AI can search across all of the documentation and find it. Or another really great use case that we've seen is searching across HR documentation. So, putting all that documentation out there, benefits, payroll, policies, and then someone can ask the question and return which document and where their answer is. That's a crawl mode. And then as you walk, that same capability expands across your entire project ecosystem. So we start looking at things like RFIs, submittals, meeting minutes, drawing revisions. It all becomes searchable, and it all becomes connected. Then we look at generative AI. And this is where you start seeing some of the productivity gains across the team quickly. So at the crawl stage, think some of the, daily report summaries, meeting minutes, owner update narratives, those types of things. And then the walk and run stages take it further, where we can actually draft bid packages or generate estimate write-ups, producing RFI, change order language, those types of things. And the reason that this is accessible earlier is that it doesn't require deeply integrated transactional data. So it works well when the output is drafting, summarize, explaining, those types of things. Machine learning is where you start predicting, not just describing. So a crawl example that resonates with construction finance is predicting invoice exceptions or cash collection risk. So patterns that they already exist somewhere in your AP and AR data. But as you walk and run, this can expand into predicting like schedule slippage or cost overruns, uh, or even like safety risks before they even become a problem. And I think this is where construction companies start shifting from reactive to more of a proactive operation. And then lastly is that agentic AI. So this is a run stage. It's where the biggest operational impact lives. So we already talked about an example, but another could be that it automatically assembles a close packet and pulls together all the invoices, the approvals, the lien waivers, change order support, anything that goes into that packet. Or it can even go to a point where it's multi-step orchestration across finance and project workflows. So the companies that are moving towards this today are most likely the ones who started with the crawl and just kept building consistently towards that agentic AI. So the key point is you don't have to know exactly where you're going on day one. We like to just say like, start in the right place and then build from there. Thanks, John. All right. So talking about some more use cases. So if we take those different types of AI models and map them against real construction use cases, what you get is a spectrum, right? So not everything delivers the same level of impact, and not everything is as equally easy to implement. So on this chart, we're looking at impact on one axis and feasibility on the other. So impact is, potential value to the business, feasibility, how practical is it to implement? So starting in the upper right is where we'd have our initial use cases. So higher feasibility, more immediate value. These are relatively easy to implement because they rely on data that's already existing. So your past projects, your documents, they don't require that deep system integration. And that's why this is where most organizations should start. As you move into the leading edge use cases, now you're just not analyzing the past, you're using current project data to predict what's going to happen next. So the impact here is significantly higher, but so is the complexity, right? So you need more consistent data across those projects, better alignment between schedules, costs, field data, and more integration between those systems. And we'll talk a little bit about the how of those items a little bit later. And then there's bleeding edge. So this is where you'll see some really cool things like AI-driven construction sequencing, which when I first was looking into this, I'm like, what does that actually mean? So really what this is saying is it's dynamically optimizing the order and the timing of the work that's happening based on real-time things like labor availability or material delays or site conditions. So as things are changing with the job, it's in the background updating that project plan or whatever you're designing it to enhance. So these are agents that don't just identify the issues, but they're coordinating responses across teams and subcontractors as that's happening. So here's what the organizations operating at that level have in common. Their data is standardized across projects. Their systems talk to each other. and they have consistent operational discipline across jobs. So they have, consistent processes, not every job running differently. It's not that they had the most advanced technology first, but they built that foundation that allows the technology to work the right way from the get-go. All right, so just want to talk through this framework quickly here. So when we work with our clients, we like to use a simple framework to identify what we call the AI sweet spot. So at a high level, it's about balancing three things: the reason you're doing it, the audience that it impacts, and the feasibility of actually delivering it. So when thinking about the reason, you can think about where would our business benefit more from predictability, excuse me, in our estimating, our project planning, our scheduling, from a time savings or an efficacy standpoint, what is a better mode for project scheduling? Or in finance, rather than hard coding data from PDFs or invoices, how can we just ingest those and free up time for our team? Another question you may ask is, what data do we want to get more insights from, or how can we tailor communication for owners or subs or internal teams? So then the second is audience. Who is actually benefiting from this? So field teams might focus more on things like daily logs or coordination. PMs are going to focus on forecasting and reporting. Suppliers and subs even are going to benefit from better communication or scheduling visibility. The more clearly you define the audience, then the easier it's going to be to help drive that adoption and measure the value in those use cases that you're putting in. And then third, uh, and this is where most companies struggle, is feasibility. Do you have the data available, and is it in a usable format? And what we mean by usable format is, and when we were talking about RAG, that's pulling off of a data source, and those data sources are either structured or unstructured. So when we talk about unstructured data, these are PDFs, Word documents, all those Excel schedules that Mike talked about that live in a file but are not structured in the sense that they live in, nice, neat, clean rows and columns in a data warehouse. That's the stuff that's structured, and that's where AI is going to be pulling from in terms of what that usable format is. When we talk about RAG, that's putting unstructured data into the model and it producing it in a way to turn it into structured data. So getting back to feasibility, what we consistently see is, the biggest constraint isn't the technology, it's the data population and also the data quality. So wanted to just put this out there in front of you to keep in the back of your minds as we go through some of these other use cases. Just start thinking about where some of these use cases may benefit you in terms of, the reason you be doing it, who's it for, and if you can even do it. All right, so getting into some more specific use cases across some areas. There's a lot here. I'm not going to read through all of them. Just to touch on how to read through this, and these can be takeaways um, for everyone to read through. But finance and accounting is a natural starting point for AI in construction. And the reason is that compared to a lot of other operational areas, finance data tends to be more structured and more mature. So that means that AI can start generating value faster here more than anywhere else in the business. So if we think about where finance teams spend a lot of their time today, a lot of it is on gathering data, reconciling it, explaining what already happened, and variance analysis is a good example. So they spend hours every month explaining why a project or a department's off plan. They manually pull that cost data, they format it, they identify the drivers. When you bring AI in, it can analyze those cost movements, it can surface the key drivers in a fraction of the time. The data is there, it just needs to be clean and consistent. So things like budgets or cost codes, actuals, revisions, those types of things. That's what makes this a crawl to walk use case. So if we jump back to that, that progression, you're not building something new from scratch. You're making better use of what's already in your finance systems. And as you walk and run, this expands into more of the forward-looking capabilities. So AI that can project margin at completion, based on current trends or flags jobs that are drifting from plan before they become problems. And that's a different conversation than one most finance teams are having today. AP, one of my favorites. And Mike and I actually, well, we just got done with a different webinar series all around AP. So it's one of the best places in construction to start applying AI. And the reason is that the problem is very visible and it's very consistent across the industry. So in most construction companies and even beyond construction, AP is often or is often operating in a very reactive manner. The team is processing high volumes of invoices from subcontractors and vendors. They're all in different formats. Some can even be handwritten. You never know. They're manually keying in that data. They're manually checking it against purchase orders. They're chasing approvals. They're trying to keep up with the volume. It's not a skills problem on the AP team. It's a process and a data problem. So the crawl stage use case that makes the most immediate impact is invoice validation and matching. So instead of hand keying invoice data and manually checking it against POs and receipts, AI can extract that information from the document. So when we think about RAG, it'll extract that information from the document, bring it into the system, and match it automatically. A goal that we always like to say to get to for AP is touchless invoicing. So that's the point from when a receipt comes in to the time the invoice goes out for payment. And when you have best-in-class automation and AI working, we're seeing trends up to 90% touchless invoice rates. So which really just means that your team is focusing on that 11%, the 10, 11% of exceptions to focus on instead of manually touching all of these different invoices. So what used to take hours of manual effort moves through in minutes. And that unlocks some significant things, right? Faster processing, fewer errors, less time chasing exceptions. But the bigger opportunity is what it does for visibility. So when invoices are moving through a clean, automated workflow, finance can have a real-time picture of what's committed, and what those actual costs are, not a picture that's 3 days behind because someone's still catching up on their backlog, right? So in construction where cash flow and job costing accuracy is everything, that visibility it's not just a nice to have, it would be a competitive advantage. And for a lot of companies, AP automation is the first place that they can see what's possible when when AI is pointed at the right problem. All right, on the receivable side, the use case getting the most traction right now is customer invoice generation. And if anyone's been through this process manually, you'll know exactly why. So today, generating a pay application or an owner invoice it's multi-step, it's manual. Someone's got to pull together, percent complete from the project system, reconcile it against what's been billed, account for any change orders, format it to the owner's requirements sometimes, and then bring all that backup documentation. It takes time. It can be prone to errors. And it often creates, a lot of back and forth before the invoice can even, be accepted. Where AI can help with that is it can help draft that invoice, and supporting documentation based on project progress, contract terms, pulling from the data that already exists across all of the systems. And then that draft goes out faster, it's more consistent. It reduces the approval cycle on the owner side because that backup can be cleaner. So this tends to be more of a walk stage use case because the data, again, it already exists but lives across multiple systems. And getting those connected is part of the work. But for construction companies where, that billing cycle time directly affects what our cash flow is, the payoff is very tangible. So, if we can get an invoice out a week earlier, consistently across every active job, that's going to add up. And then if we go to project management, this is really where finance connects with operations. It's where some of the most valuable AI use cases in construction start to come into focus. So the challenge today is that risk identification in most construction companies is periodic. So monthly cost reviews, schedule updates, project walks. By the time a risk shows up in a report, it's often already had a financial impact. So if we think about things like predictive scheduling, it can help change that issue. So instead of identifying problems after they've shown up in the numbers, AI can continuously analyze that project data, the cost trends, the schedule updates, the field activity, and then identify any patterns that the or signals any potential issues earlier on. So, for example, recognizing that a concrete phase is trending over budget based on how similar scopes have performed on past jobs, or flagging that schedule slippage is one area that is likely to cascade into more downstream work. Surfacing those signals early enough for a project manager, or for a finance team to actually do something about them, can be really helpful and again, shift from a reactive to a proactive perspective. Um, the data requirements here are more significant. We're bringing more in, and it's more of a walk to run use case. But the organizations moving toward it now are the ones that are going to have a real edge in how they manage project performance and project margin. And then our last area here, bidding and estimating. This is where we start to see some long-term AI use cases in construction, and where the industry has a lot to gain. So estimating today still relies heavily on past experience, spreadsheets, and fragmented historical data. I was in a workshop with a construction client recently and talking through a lot of how they process their estimations, where all the data comes from. And when I asked that question, someone pointed to a whiteboard behind me, and up in the corner, it literally said, "All roads lead to Excel," which was hilarious. And I think that's pretty common across the industry, and it's even one that Mike highlighted early on. But the problem with that model isn't that the knowledge doesn't exist. It's that it's locked in spreadsheets, it's in people's heads, in project files that nobody is systematically analyzing, right? So every bit is starting mostly from scratch, or someone's remembering that one project and then they're going and searching in their files to have as a starting point. But when you structure that historical data, those estimate line items, the final job costs, production rates, all of it, and you layer AI on top of that, you can start analyzing large volumes of that past project performance and start identifying those patterns that help an estimator simply can't see it at a scale of all the projects. So it leads to more accurate data-driven estimates. It helps on margins, and better bid competitiveness. But for a business where a bad estimate can define the probability of like an entire year, that would be a very meaningful shift. So it's got a lot of impact there. All right, so to cap all of those use cases up, if you step back from all of those, something becomes clear. Most of them run on a relatively small number of core data sets. Um, So documents and contracts, we have invoices, RFIs, submittals, project correspondence. When those are organized and accessible, RAG and generative AI can start extracting value almost immediately. If we looked at cost data, where we have their budgets, actuals, commitments, change orders, when that's structured and consistent, AI can help explain variances, they can support forecasting, and even help estimators analyze some of that historical performance. At the project and job data, so project IDs, cost codes, hierarchies, that's the connective tissue that lets predictive models identify those patterns across your jobs and provide meaningful insights. So the key point is you don't have to boil the ocean. You don't need to clean every single piece of data in the organization before you start, and that's not even what we would recommend. If you focus on the core data sets that actually drive your operations, you can unlock a wide range of AI capabilities and faster than most people expect. And if you notice the theme also across the last several slides, it isn't really been about the AI technology. It really is about the data behind it. Organizations that can structure and govern their data well move from a crawl mode to a walk to a run much faster. And that's what we're going to talk about in the last part of this. All right, so this slide is designed to show how AI use cases depend on the quality of data as we start talking through a few of these other areas. So think about three levels of AI capability and construction. So the first is internal financial analysis, right? So we're generating cost versus budget reports. We're projecting margins on active jobs. This is going to run almost entirely on clean ERP data, right? So we have job cost actuals, budgets, cost codes. If that data is clean, this is achievable today. Then if we bring a second layer in, which is our external relationships, so subcontractor schedules, client communications, upcoming milestones, now AI can help generate proactive notifications, simulate the impact of schedule changes on, on a cash flow or even flag communication gaps with some of our key subcontractors. But this is going to require both the financial data and project and relationship data to be connected and reliable. And then at a bigger picture, the third layer is more of a strategic view. So we combine financials, project planning, market intelligence, client engagement to forecast the impact of bigger decisions. So which projects to prioritize, which clients to target for new bids, what the expected financial outcome looks like across your portfolio. Each of these layers is possible, but each one requires more from your data, more coverage, more consistency, and more integration across your systems. So the ceiling on what AI can do for your business is largely set by the quality of the data that's underneath it, which is just a fancy way of saying garbage in, garbage out, right? We want that clean data to be able to give us those confident results. So everything we've talked about today ultimately comes back to the question of where does bad data actually come from? How do you stop it at the source? In construction, data doesn't come from one system, obviously, right? It comes from superintendents in the field, project managers at different sites, subcontractors, multiple tools, multiple teams. And the further that the data travels from where it was created, the more consistent it's going to get. So if you wait until reporting to fix it, you're always cleaning up after the fact. So just three simple ways and levers that we see work. So the first can be automating data capture wherever possible. So the more you rely on manual data entry, especially after the fact, the more variability that you're introducing. So leading firms are pushing data capture into the field through mobile tools, equipment tracking, system integration so that that data is recorded in real time and not reconstructed at the end of the week. The second is standardization. So if every project is using slightly different cost codes or units, or naming conventions, you're not going to be able to roll anything up reliably because AI depends on those patterns, right? And patterns are only going to emerge when the data is consistent across those jobs. So this doesn't require a massive governance initiative. It just requires agreement on a minimal viable standard and the discipline to help enforce it. The third is validating at the point of entry. So don't wait until reporting to catch the issues. Put some of those controls in place so that incomplete or incorrect data can't even be submitted in the first place. Things like missing cost codes or mismatched hours or unapproved changes. This is the lever that's going to make that improvement stick over time. So ultimately, across these three, you don't want to fix data quality downstream. You want to fix it where it's created, and these three levers can help at the starting point. All right, so once organizations start thinking about data quality, the next natural question is where do we actually start? Because trying to clean all enterprise data at once is usually going to fail. And what we found is that there's four practical levers that finance leaders can pull that dramatically help improve that data quality. So the first lever is master data standardization. So if you've ever tried to compare job performance across projects and realize that every team is using slightly different job IDs, cost codes, even status definitions, vendor and customer names, if they're shortened or if they're using the full name, then you've seen some of this firsthand. Almost every finance, APAR, estimating, project management use case that we discussed earlier depends on these definitions being consistent. And again, that practical step is not some huge governance document. Again, it's agreeing on minimal viable standard and then enforcing that going forward. The second lever is data timing. So this isn't just about data accuracy. So a lot of forecasting and WIP problems happen because information is arriving too late. So labor hours get entered days later, quantities installed aren't captured until the end of the week, and then delays aren't logged until someone asks, right? That's going to create lag in the numbers that finance is relying on. So what some organizations do differently is establish a clear cadence for that field inputs. So whether it's the same day or next day, and that's for labor, equipment, quantities, field issues, all those types of things. That alone can dramatically improve the reliability of what forecasts are. The third lever is the document structure. So this is what we highlighted earlier as being that crawl mode of AI. So construction organizations generate a ton of documentation, right? Contracts, RFIs, change orders, all these types of things that we talked about. But they're scattered across everybody's folders, they're in emails, they're in different systems. So by creating a controlled repository and attaching basic metadata, things like project name, document type, effective date, approval status, those types of things. And you can do this in just like a SharePoint. You suddenly make those documents usable for both people and AI. And then that's where you can see some of your first AI wins is to point that model directly to your SharePoint and search across whatever you're trying to find. But it starts with, um, getting into that consistent structure and controlled place. Then fourth is the golden thread approach. So again, this points at instead of trying to clean every data set, pick one end-to-end chain that finance relies on most. So something like a project, a cost code, budget, actual cost, clean that flow through a small set of pilot projects. And then what happens is you improve margin visibility or forecasting accuracy more quickly so that the team can see the benefit. And then you start expanding those standards across the organization and it becomes a lot easier to have those conversations. All right. I'm going to go a little bit quicker through this one just to make sure we have enough time to get through everything. But really what we're getting at here is that getting data clean is one challenge. Keeping it clean is a different one. And that's where a lot of organizations struggle. So the pattern that we consistently see is, and this is in any industry, is you clean the data, things look better for a few months, and then 6 months later, you're right back to where you started. There's new projects, cost codes drift, field inputs get inconsistent again. So without structure around how data is created and maintained, the improvement isn't going to hold. So a few areas. One is ownership. Someone's got to be accountable for each core data set. So, for example, controller owns the close and reconciliation process. They own the definitions there. Or like PMO owns scheduling version, or the finance owns WIP or forecast drivers, something like that. When ownership is named by the process rather than by the system, then you're going to know exactly who to go to when something is off, and you have someone who's invested in keeping it right. Then we have control. So this is really just getting at, think about how often things change in construction, right? New projects, the schedule shift, cost codes come in, change orders, costs go up. If those changes aren't controlled, then you end up breaking reports or creating inconsistencies, which are ultimately going to impact whatever your AI model that it is sitting on top of those results. So putting simple change control processes in place is like who can create a new project, who could change cost structures, um, putting a process in place for how schedules can be changed or approved. Um, those are the things that are going to help from a control perspective. Clarity, maintaining a data dictionary, pretty much so that everybody's on the same page. Everyone's speaking the same language. When those definitions vary across teams, again, your reporting is going to be unreliable, and then your AI sitting on top of that is going to inherit the same problem. And then lastly is structure. Design your system so it's easier to enter data correctly. So this is pointing back to data at the entry point, right? Drop downs instead of free text, standardizing some of those templates, guided workflows, those types of things. So if you step back, these are really about making it easier to do the right thing with data and harder to do the wrong thing. And then when that's in place, your data can stay clean, not because you're, trying to constantly fix it, but because your operations are going to be set up to maintain it. And then this last slide is just maintaining a data dictionary, just as a tangible takeaway of what a very simple data dictionary could look like. It's something you could start building from. Um, what makes this useful is a combination of elements. So you have domain and owner that's going to tell you who's accountable. You have the data type and the standard values as to where some of those inconsistencies usually hide. Um, because the difference between a drop down or a free text field could break that model. Source system and related tables tell you how data flows across the system, which is where conflicts tend to surface early on. So the important thing is that this doesn't have to be all built at once. Again, pick one or two domains where you know that you have data quality problems. Um, for most construction companies, that's finance or project management, and start there. You can think of it as like a blueprint for your data. It doesn't do the work it doesn't do the work itself, but it makes everything that you're building on top of it actually trustworthy. So before I hand it back to Mike, just to kind of recap on something, that the AI opportunity in construction is real. It's here now. And the companies that are moving on it are not the ones that are waiting for, the perfect data or the perfect moment, right? They're the ones that they picked a starting point, they built some consistency, and they kept going from there. So, with that, Mike, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, David. Wait for the camera to fire up here. All right. So just to summarize again. So AI readiness in construction, as David just shared with us, is mostly it's mostly a data operating model problem. If your firm can standardize project and finance master data, tighten the field to office communications, um, get your document and unstructured data layer clean, popular on Teams today, uh, and really get control over all of the inputs to your WIP and forecast, you're creating the foundation for RAG first, generative second, machine learning third, and then agentic AI last. And that sequence aligns with where construction specific sources say firms are seeing practical value today and where we're seeing our clients get the value. So as a next step, if you want to send us a couple of ideas or some of the use cases that you're thinking about, we'd be happy to spend some time with your team to figure out how we can actually see that in action. Whatever the case, we'd love to meet with you. We'll custom curate an AI agenda for you. If you're AI curious, that can be the agenda component. If you want to talk about, like I said, initial use cases, we can curate that to the agenda too. Or maybe if you own Copilot, but you're not sure where to start, or whether it's being adopted, we can provide some education or agent prompting workshops for you. And if you're ready to take it to the enterprise, we can look at your data and do an enterprise tool evaluation session with you. But regardless, we would love to meet with you. David and I love to meet new people. It's part of my job, so I have to love it. But I really do, and I hope to hear from you all. So we got a couple minutes left here, and just we could open the floor for questions. And yeah, so I'll monitor the chat here for questions.
Yeah, any questions out there? Anything at all? Do we need a an icebreaker? I can fire away here. So David made the comment about not sitting back and waiting for the right opportunity or waiting for the right tool or the right time to jump in and just kind of learn along the way and kind of walk slowly, I guess. But are there any major lessons learned when you talk to fellow people or fellow clients or even coworkers or whoever that are just kind of dabbling in the AI for improving efficiencies? Are you hearing any major lessons learned at all?
Yeah, Mike, I'll say something if you have any ideas too. But I think one thing that we've seen is we've heard that we'll ask like, "Hey, do you have Copilot?" as a very common starting point. Um, do you have Copilot as part of your Microsoft shop? And they're like, "Oh yeah, but not everyone's really using it." Or that can be a really great place to start from a personal productivity standpoint. That um, building an agent sounds kind of like scary and ominous, and it requires a lot of coding, and it's actually super easy. Um, and it can just be, just from a personal perspective of helping. I built one the other week to say, what are all of the, follow up on all the things that, or give me what did I say? Give me a list of all the things that I haven't followed up with that may have slipped through the cracks. And it'll go through my emails or my teams and give me a list every week to say like, hey, just to make sure, did you follow up on this? So something just super easy, and it requires no coding. So a lot of those types of things, or even recording workshops or those types of things that just starting with Copilot is a great place to start. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I would just to add to what David said, John. I think one of the things that might have been hidden in the question was uh, I'm a little bit anxious or not sure of how to go about doing this. And I would just say to everybody on the call today, look, AI is new. All right. We get that. Like AI is a new thing, but we've been through this before, right? Like if you rewind a few years, we had the RPA, boom. We had SaaS ERP come into play. And then in the construction industry, I mean, like 70 years ago, we had steam shovels. And now we have pieces of equipment with lasers and cameras that are even autonomous now, right? So we've come a long way. And if you think about it that way, look, it's a new piece of technology, then then you can pull from your playbook of putting in new pieces of technology in your business, and it becomes less daunting.
It's a good way to look at it. Thank you. What else? What other questions are out there? Quiet crowd. You guys provided too much
It's a
info.
lot. It's a lot of info to get through. So
Yeah.
I was even running out a little time there at the end. So
I thought it was very
it's a
informative.
it's a lot to think through and a lot to process. So
Absolutely. I'll give one more shot here, people. We have
Mhm.
two very knowledgeable presenters. Any questions?
Oh, is cost a prohibitor to small contractors? Um,
Hmm.
it maybe, but I don't think so because there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there. Um, Dave just talked about Copilot. There's some really great Copilot
Yep.
licensing promotions out there that I want to say though there's one specifically for SMBs, and I don't have the information in front of me, but it's a decent deal. Um,
Yeah, and even if we jump back to talking about RAG and scanning those documents, there's a lot of tools out there including what we've built as a part of Lumenfi, uh, that is, it's it's a great cost entry point, and it basically what it's doing is scanning that information, and it'll either give you that results or you can, push it into another system. But some of those like Mike said, some of those low-hanging fruit um, are a great place to start.
yeah, and you know, Wesley, if you had a specific use case in mind, David and I would be more than happy to think through the business case with you to say, hey, it does make financial sense to put some money towards this, or nah, there's better ways to spend your money.
Yep.
And this today's seminar is one of a handful we've done on AI, and cost comes up pretty much every seminar. And one of the responses, I forget which seminar it was, but one of the presenters made the comment that there's so many tools coming out and so many apps coming out, and they're very cost efficient. $7 a month, $5 a month, whatever, and they're
Hmm.
just trying to get their name out there. So you learn about the app now, and then that's kind of the next trend is going to be this big price jump. Whenever it's fully adapted and fully in use, you might see prices jump up a lot in the next year or so. So
Sure.
get on board now. You might be grandfathered in at that low cost now. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
ask
no
about the
promises on the
multi-year
grandfather
deals.
part.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, now, so just Johnny made me think of something. I know we're a little over time. I'll leave with one final thought. The I've never seen anybody put in new technology or gain a competitive advantage and then take their foot off the gas. And also, if you're in that small contractor world, you're at a unique point because you can move faster than the bigger guys out there. So now is the right time to start thinking about where the business case is to gain those efficiencies, to gain that competitive edge for your business, while the other folks are still going through all the organizational red tape to buy an AI solution. So I'll leave you with that.
Yep.
Nice. Do you have any parting comments, David?
Um, I would say, and I think I mentioned earlier, just not to wait. Don't wait for the perfect tool. Don't wait till your data is going to be perfect. Start making some of those changes. Take a critical look at the systems that you have. Is this something that's gonna, you know, AI isn't going away soon. So is the system that I have and how we're working, is this going to be able to take me, into the future? And if not, What are some changes that we should make? Is there a new system that we should be looking at? All those kind of things is all focused around your data and how you're working internally. Um, don't wait on it and start looking at some of those things. So that's all I got.
Absolutely, good stuff. I did get a couple emails during the presentation about people who had trouble with the link. So luckily, today's program is recorded. So there's people that couldn't get in for whatever reason. I
Hmm.
will email you, so don't you worry. Um, and as far as everyone, whether you're here right now or whether you get an email of the program, I will be sending out the contact information for Mike, Michael, and David, which they just put on the screen right now. So awesome to see. But in the email notice, I'll put that information in there as well. And on behalf of the KCA, just want to thank both of you and thank the SSD team, ST Digital team for today's program. Found it very informative. Thank you very much. Keep up the great work, and hopefully you get some calls here. So thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.